Welcome to SethCraft. I'm currently building a 20 by 30 workshop and it's time to insulate my ceiling. Now there are several methods of insulating a ceiling, such as sprayed insulation, you've got your blown insulation, or in my case I'm using the traditional bats of fiberglass insulation. The reason I've gone with this is because I'm familiar with it and it's quick and easy to install, and also you don't have to have special equipment to either spray up here or blow the insulation. So that's what I've opted to go with. Now there are a few things that I have to do to get this prepared. One of them is using a ventilation or a baffle system. It's just a piece of either plastic or, in this case, cheap foam, and this will go into the space above the eaves to allow ventilation from the lower portion of the building to go up along above the insulation and out the ridge cap. Because these are far too long, I'm going to be cutting them down in half to 2-foot pieces. And I'll just staple these into the eaves real quick, and that is our first task. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Cutting these is no big deal. You just take your razor knife here at the midway point, get that scored. Might be helpful if I used a sharp knife, but you know how it goes. Alright, there we go. I now have 2 sections of that ready to go up into the eave space. Down here there is a soffit material with slits in it, and that allows airflow to rise up into this space, and it needs to travel along the top of the building and eventually find its way to the ridge cap over there. And so, in order to put the insulation to about this point right here, I need to have that baffle or vent to kind of keep that insulation from going all the way up to the top of the roof here. So let's go ahead and install that styrofoam piece. I want to make sure that my vent is facing in this direction, and I'm just going to place this up here. Now it's designed to go between 2 foot on center for these trusses spaces here. And I'm going to push this back far enough that I know the insulation won't be going back that far. Use a stapler and just keep this in place. Now you notice over here on this other side I have a 2x4, and that is going to prevent me from putting this baffle in there, so the insulation will just butt up against that one and we won't worry about it. But the rest of these down the line will have to have these baffles on both sides of the building. I now have all of those styrofoam baffle ventilation systems installed, and they are allowing airflow from the soffit vents up to the top up here. So if I were to point to it, right there is where the airflow is coming out of, and it allows it to continue up. So now it's time to move on to the bats of insulation that will go up here. Now I am using R19, which is designed for 2x6, but if you're going to be doing this in a climate that has a lot more cold winters or hot summers, then you may want to go with something like an R38. So the temperature here in the summertime is typically not going to exceed about 75 to 80 degrees, and in the wintertime we only have a couple of days that ever reach below the double digits, such as 10 degrees. So, all right, I'm going to open this up and let this expand for a moment, and that will allow us to have the most loft whenever I go to put this up here. This insulation is called craft faced, which means it has a paper on the front that have little tabs that fold out, and these tabs allow you to staple onto the trusses and hold this up into position. And so we'll be using those here in just a minute to staple up. Now this is fiberglass insulation, so I'm just going to wear this bandana to help keep that fine floating fiberglass out of my lungs. Alright, it's time to get started with the first bat here. I have found that this method seems to be okay, considering I'm working with 10-foot walls. So I put this over my back and I just stuff this into the eave space over here, enough that it will not allow any air to pass, but not so much that it goes past that styrofoam baffle. And then I move out just far enough that I can pull this aside, grab my stapler, and put a few staples in here. It gets to the point where it'll hold itself up, but you have to get there first. All right, turn around a little bit and just stuff this up here. Yeah, so you got to get just enough stapled up here so it'll hold itself. All right, let me move my ladder down a little bit. I've used a couple different brands of this insulation, and one of them has much stronger tabs to hold up when you staple in, but it doesn't loft up as quick or as well. So I don't know, it's kind of a trade-off. This one here though I kind of like because it does loft up quicker and seems to be fuller once it's up here in the ceiling space. Now after I have the insulation hanging up here so it's not going to fall, I like to spend a little extra time here where it goes into the eave space. So I will fold these out and put a staple right here at the edge. And then I'll also make sure there's no airflow getting through this crack right here. And it seems pretty good. So now I can just go back and make sure I filled in any spots that are showing some gaps. When I got to this ceiling receptacle, I simply cut out two sides and stuffed the insulation up along the side of this outlet. And that's all I had to do to get that insulation around there. I have those first bats installed and it went pretty smooth. I probably could have taken a little bit more time to fluff those out, and I think that's what I'm going to do here with these before I get them installed. Just throw them out for a bit and let them fluff up. Let me show you the work that's already been done in these other rooms over here. So I have finished up the ceiling over here on this side, and it is very nice. I don't know if it'll show up for you or not, but when I walk into these rooms, the audio changes because the insulation has deadened the sound. I have also finished the insulation on the ceiling in here as well for this other room, which means I only have to do this big room to be complete. Because all of this is so repetitive, I'm going to go ahead and finish this up without you, and I will show you what the finished product looks like. Now, I did have to stuff insulation over the middle walls. As you can see right here, I've got one last little piece right there to finish up, but no big deal. Now I'm going to have a little bit of extra insulation, and I will put that on top of my utility room whenever I am ready to get that insulated as well. But as you can see, I have several more cavities to go, so let me get to work here. As you can see, I am down to the last 3 pieces of insulation from having this ceiling done. Everything else has been stapled up and is holding out quite nicely. So I've got my baffles already up here on these last 2, and like I mentioned before, I can't put a baffle here on this last one because of the way my blocking is, but it's going to be just fine. So let's go ahead and measure out this distance and get this up here. And I wanted to mention that this last one over here is a little bit different. There are trusses here and here to attach this piece to, but when you move over here, there is nothing to attach to on this side. So what I found though is the top plate is just sticking out enough that I just drape the insulation up over here and it holds it up just fine. So makes it pretty easy. All right, let's go ahead and get these last 3 pieces installed. When measuring these out, I have found that it's actually better to go several inches more than you think you need. Unlike wall insulation where you just go 1 inch more than your wall cavity, this I've had several times where this connection over here, I've had to take more bats and put them over because of the way there was too much of a gap between these two. Anyhow, so what I probably have here is around 50 So you got 55 right there. So let's go ahead and do about 56 to 57 inches on that one to get it correct. You'll notice I'm using a different brand now. I ran out of the other, so this is what we have left. So what I want to do is measure out, let's do 57 inches. So measure this out, gonna make a mark, and then I like to use a flat edge such as this level and go ahead and just press down on the insulation and then cut. I know this light is kind of in your way here, but I wanted to show you this one because it's a little bit unique. If you look right here, I've got one of my wires going down to feed a receptacle. So what I want to do here is match up where this would be going into the cavity here. And then I'm going to take my razor and just make a little slit on the insulation where that wire is. And so now I can just do a little bit of a cut on here to allow this to slip into that space a little better. Do what I've done with all the other insulation. Stuff this into place. Press this up. And make sure I've got enough touching the other insulation over here. Kind of use that side as my guide. And yeah, there's plenty right there. So I can just begin to staple this into place. I'm a bit embarrassed to say that it took me several weeks to get the insulation up here on the ceiling, but it is done now and I am very thankful. I don't know if you can tell here with the mic, but after getting the wall and the ceiling insulated, it is kind of a dead sound in here for no more echo. I like it a lot. And also, I noticed this morning it was cold in here whenever I didn't have the last panels up, and then in the afternoon it was warmer in here. But now here this evening with the insulation done, it is very comfortable. So I am happy to have this done. Let me show you a little tour around real quick and then we will close out this video. This is the room I started with here in the video and it is completely done. Like I said before, I just stuffed the insulation onto the top plate over here and did not staple, but it seems to be holding quite well with no gaps or issues. Now, the way my blocking was done, I have to come back and put a little extra insulation here in the corner. I saw a little bit of light shining through right there earlier, so I'll get that stuffed, but this room is looking pretty good. Now, I didn't show you, but the insulation that goes above this wall here, I just stuffed it over and then stapled it on both sides, and then got it all the way down this way. Now if we step in here, this insulation, so there's the other side of that, as you can see right there. Kind of the same deal going above this wall. A lot of the insulation is just stuffed up over there. Now of course the wall itself is screwed up to the top, and so there may be a few little gaps up there, but I think it's just going to be what it is. And then lastly over here in this last room, well, you're not going to be able to see much in this room because it's so dark. I don't have lights in here yet, but I got this room done just like the others. I forgot to mention earlier that I used the Arrow T50. This is a 5/16 staple, and I used about half of them, 1,250 in a pack. Just got those from Lowe's. Also, instead of using an actual mask, I just used different bandanas to protect my lungs. Better than nothing, and it's a lot of insulation, so definitely wear glasses too to save your eyes. So anyway, I hope you found this video helpful. If you have, hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed because I have lots more content here in this 20x30 workshop build. I'm Seth with the SethCraft Workshop, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.